Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Locker Room on this first day of September. I'm Alan Locker. Thank you for being here. A much beloved Snyder is in the house today. Actress Jennifer Ashe is here today to take us on a trip back in time through her career and two of her unforgettable roles as Lily Slater on ABC's Loving and as Meg Snyder Reyes Landry on CBS's As the World Turns. Jennifer is a proud member of the Theater Unleashed, 2 Cents Theater Group, and the Foundry Theatre Works. Some of her favorite credits include Dean Productions King Lear, HFF 2 Cents, the award-winning immersive Unreal City, and Vote for Murder. Recent films include Coming to Terms, honored in the New York International Film Festival, Silhouette of a Ghost, and CSI Murder Most Foul. She just completed the film Nowhere Pie, and her web series, Struggling, will finally air later this year. It is such a pleasure to welcome Jennifer Ashe to the Locker Room. Hey, Jennifer.
Hello. It's so good to be here.
Thank you for being here. Fans, I know, are very excited to see you, as am I to meet you.
And you.
I'll just read a couple things from some fans. Jane Million Bell said, I loved her as Meg. I named my daughter after her. Andy Hall says she was so good as Teen Meg, impulsive, childish, self-involved, but also loyal to those she loved, mischievous, hungry for more than she had been given in life. She got a sexy husband with a lot of money, a penthouse apartment, but no love. She found that and an unexpected maturity in the most unlikely of places, her adopted cousin Josh. To be honest, young Meg was annoying at times, the bad girl, but somewhere along the way, I really grew to like and admire this self-absorbed girl who became a woman with integrity. I thought Jennifer Ashe did such a good job of creating this complex character who was never, in capital letters, boring.
Thank you. That's amazing. That's amazing.
We will get to World Turns and Loving, but, you know, I know you've been spending time anytime you can on the picket lines with hopes that the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike will prevail in getting compensation for all. What has it been like being out with your, fellow folks?
Well, again, some friends of mine were writers, so they've actually been on the line even longer. And I did go a couple of times in solidarity, but to be fair, I didn't really go out till SAG went, and then really were out on a regular basis. And it's bittersweet because you run into friends you haven't seen, and we make strike dates. But I'm also listening. The writers are the ones that are in the negotiations at this point or working on it, and then SAG is after. So going and listening to my writer friends and finding out that we're not getting closer at this point to having an understanding. And, the last time SAG went out, we kicked the can down the road for cable to finish everything else. Cable equals streaming. And so these are the seeds we sowed back then. So this time we really have to stay strong to be able to get fair compensation. There is no reason why somebody who has a job on a television show has to work an Uber to pay their bills. It's just, there was an article, I do not know the man, but an article of this man saying that he saw this billboard. It was actually a writer, and he had made it because his show was up on this billboard, and he saw it while he was driving an Uber. That's got to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you feel they're any closer to a resolution?
Unfortunately, right now, no, but the pain for the producers is just beginning to be felt. So the last offer they gave to the writers was not, it was basically, we've given you a great offer, so just take it and let's move on. And it's like, you actually haven't. And there are a lot of pit holes and all these things. So until they can get back and work out those details, we're not really moving forward.
That makes sense. You recently appeared on stage in Things to Avoid at a eulogy at the Hollywood Fringe Festival, where you played a woman who has stage 4 cancer and has pushed everyone in her life away. The show won a few awards during the run and may have the opportunity to do a full run this fall. Was, I assume, but was that a difficult role to play?
It was, well, it was a great role to play. First of all, it was just me and another woman. So the premise is that I hire this woman to, I now need help, but I don't want to have, I don't want to care about anybody. I just need some help. And it's our relationship on how we start to care for one another. And I have a foul mouth and, and it's funny as well as, spoiler alert, I die, so it's the journey. And it's a lot about her journey of being able to let go, because we find out from her how she has never been able to let go. So it's her journey. And it looks like we are going to be doing a full run, which is amazing. And Lindsay Seam is the actress that I play with, and she's wonderful.
Where will it run?
I don't know where it will be run at this point. Looking the backers and the money and all that's being put together. Right. We were at the Hollywood Fringe. It was my 5th Hollywood Fringe, which is a wonderful festival that allows a lot of people who couldn't afford to do an entire play to be able to put something out, to get it started, to get people's interest, and to hopefully move forward. Or sometimes they're just about the experience of having those, it's pretty much like 5 or 6 shows within this crazy, wacky, everybody's going from show to show to show, and you go to the Fringe Central at night to see your friends and celebrate. It's June. It's a great June.
Let's go back. Where did you grow up, and where did your love of theater begin?
Well, I grew up in Atlanta. And so it actually started I started out as a dancer. And I remember I went to Performing Arts High School. And one of the things that we did was we were the street urchins in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. And so the theater department, the acting department was over here and the dance department was over here. And then we got together for musicals. But there was really something about doing that play and watching the whole process of a straight play that I just fell in love with. And I did go to New York to be a dancer, but it did quickly change over into, it first started just trying to audition for commercials so that as I was waiting on tables, I could, pay the rent. And then I did an after school special, actually with Meg Ryan back in the day. And we just started the sort of that group of us as we started growing, got deeper into the acting classes, got deeper into the work, and it all kept going back to theater. And so I was with Manhattan Class Company back in the day, and it's with Bernie Tulsey. They now have their own theater. We didn't back then. We were at the 45th Street Playhouse, but it just kept going that every time I was on stage, it was my home. I felt I could settle in and go, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And so no matter what I did, even while I was on the shows, I always went back to theater.
Love that. Who were some of your early role models or mentors?
That's an interesting question. Wow. The first I was thinking of actually in dance, watching Leslie Brown do The Turning Point, and then watching Shirley MacLaine. She played her mom, and but as far as mentor, I'm drawing a little bit of a blank, to be fair.
That's fine. It might pop in when we're talking. Take us back. ABC's Lovings comes about. What do you remember about the audition and screen test for Lily?
Well, actually, we all auditioned for both roles. All three roles. Yeah, we all auditioned for Lily,
Lauren Marie, and Susan,
Casey, and Lorna. And so we just kept mixing and matching and mixing and matching. And in my personality, I'm kind of a loud person. So I never really thought that they would consider me for Lily, because she was such a, this was such this introverted, damaged person. And we ended up, when we were doing the screen test, we were all together. I mean, the ones that actually got the roles, we all were getting to know one another. And so once I saw Susan, was like, yeah, she looks pretty Lorna-esque. I was like, I guess I'm going home. And then I got Lily, which, again, getting to work with John Cunningham was amazing. He played my father, and Perry Stevens, of course. It was a really interesting experience. They were sort of figuring out how to deal with this subject matter, because it was about father-daughter incest, and it was touchy, and some things worked, some things didn't work. And the end of the day, they wound up sort of taking that storyline out quickly, because they were going to be airing something about Amelia, which was Ted Danson, and they wanted to say it was the first time they dealt with father-daughter incest. So they shut that storyline down and took us out real quick. And that was a shame, because I don't think that they completed the story well.
Mm-hmm.
So that she ended up going to an insane asylum, and that wasn't the best way to wrap up, because it was sort of like, don't say this out loud, and it wasn't the right message at the time. And I know I had some people coming up to me that said they had been abused in my life, and I was sort of like, wow, I don't know how to handle this. I didn't. I was handed a script. I actually had, and so spent time sort of figuring out how to delve in that by talking to them, and hopefully helping them, but helping me, so that I could present it. I don't mean realistically, but with sensitivity.
Well, sort of as realistically as possible. But that's a hefty responsibility at a young age too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, speaking on that, I wanted to read what Eric had just sent me. I've always been intrigued by Loving and its creation. The Nixon Marlin brainchild captivated me. I'm not a survivor of incest, but as a very interested viewer, believe that in the capable hands of you, Agnes, and Douglas, we were being given a nuanced public interest piece that only daytime could deliver. Eric says, I heard you say in previous interviews about that as a young actress, you took responsibility for Lily's story. That was tremendous bravery, as was your compassion shown towards the survivors who confided in you at such a young age about their sexual traumas. There were many memorable characters on Loving that entertained throughout the show's run, but you managed to be memorable, not just on that show, but to the soap world in a short amount of time.
Thank you.
And it's a big impact on also a brand new show to tackle such a hefty.
Absolutely. And that was the thing with Loving, was they were using, the AIDS crisis. They were actually using that as a storyline. I do think part of the reason Something About Amelia was able to be done was because we had, they were breaking ground. They really were. And you're right. The, Agnes Nixon, Doug Marlin combination really, they broke ground on a lot of subjects that people were, they were not 100% now we know we could handle it, but they didn't know the public could handle it at that point, and they went for it.
Absolutely. Had you been a fan of soaps prior to getting Lily?
Yeah, absolutely. I was the ABC, the lineup, the All My Children, One Life to Live General Hospital lineup, and I watched that in high school, and was like, oh, let's run home and see what's happening now,
So
absolutely.
were you excited when Lily came up?
Yes. Yeah. No, and it's a wonderful job. I mean, again, it's the idea that you get to something is to you every day. Oh, am I back?
You're back. Yeah.
It's so sorry.
Okay.
It's the idea that something is handed to you every day. You work with a group of people where you do have to you do improv a little bit. It's not in theater, you're word for word because somebody spent a year writing that script. This, you're honoring what the writer is saying and you're putting it into your own voice because they've got to pull out a script every day. And it's it's a beautiful workout gym for actors. And I was, as I said, very lucky to work some really talented people, and I learned so much.
I've never heard the workout gym because that's really a great analogy. That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Because and when you work with Doug, oh my God, he puts every character into every show. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, I work one day this week, or I work 5 days a week. I had a day off. It was weird, so, but that was the beauty of Doug being able, he could throw a bunch of balls up in the air and tell a bunch of stories at once.
Do you remember meeting Doug for the first time?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I was about to say I remember, but it was actually As the World Turns. He pulled me aside when I was actually doing the screen test, and he's like, "Look where we are! Look where we are!" It was so cute. The first time. We didn't see him during the screen test. We saw Agnes during the screen test. We did not see Doug, or I didn't see Doug. I can't actually swear anybody else didn't. So the first time we were introduced to him was actually when the show got together. And what they did with Loving, they shot it a little differently than other shows. So on As the World Turns, you go to this set, you do everything in that set, you move everything, you do everything in that set. Doug was talking to us about the fact that it was going to work more like a theater piece. So what happens is there's a camera here, camera here, camera here, right? And so, or actually, no, there's two, just here and here, right? So this scene goes on right here. That scene ends, we shut up. The camera over here goes on. This camera pulls out, goes to the other set, down, up. So it's run in order without stopping, and they're trying to do that without editing it. So we did the entire first act, the entire second act, right? And so when I was on As the World Turns, I didn't meet Don Hastings for a year because I never went to the hospital, right? And as we were the last PM schedule, right? So with Loving, we were a tight group. And Doug absolutely was a part of that tight group.
I love that. Is there someone at Loving that you think you really learned a lot from? Because it was a new role, a new show, all of the above.
Well, yes, everybody, because it was a big deal for me. And really getting to work again, as I say, with John Cunningham, but also Ann Williams. Ann Williams she was the woman who played my mother. Yeah. And she really took me under her wing. And, when I was like, when some of those split personality things started coming at me and I was freaking out a little bit, she was just so beautiful about just bringing me in, talking me through it, helping me, just here's some choices, let's work and going here. She was such a mentor for me. When you say early mentor, there it is, Ann Williams. And that again, she unfortunately had cancer when we first began the show, and they actually did a beautiful job. I mean, she was in chemo, and they had a bed for her on stage so she could rest. And she actually passed away not long after we were off the show.
Wow.
But I did stay close with her.
What a nice thing for them to do, though, to have
it was
that.
Great. No, it was really generous. I mean, generous is the wrong word, but the idea is they chose to hire someone that they knew was going to be going through some pretty serious chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they thought that she was going to get to the other end of it, which she did. She wasn't doing chemo the whole time, but it came back, and but they completely accommodated her during that time period. And it was from the very beginning. Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Doug brought you over to Oakdale. Tell me how that all happened, and what you thought of Meg when you first heard about her.
Well, actually, that's a funny story. So at the time, for whatever reason, my television had broken, and it could do sound, but it couldn't do picture. And I hadn't bothered to get a new television. So I'm auditioning for this, and I'm auditioning, and I don't know it's Doug because I wasn't smart enough to do the research at that point. Now, every time I get an audition, I do the research of who's involved, but
Yeah, early, so, you got to learn these things as you
have to learn these things. Exactly. Yeah. So I take a look at the script, and I don't know who Dusty is. And I'm going to be working with Dusty. And I haven't seen the television show, so I have no idea. So reading the script, I'm like, oh, clearly it's a teacher, and it's it's an older person, and she's trying to seduce him. Okay. And so a friend of mine, we work on it, and this and that, and the other. So I came in with something completely different than everybody else because they had seen who Dusty was. They had seen Brian Bloom. And so there was this big storm that came through Manhattan. Oh, and I had gotten, it could have, no, because the screen test, I would have met him. So I had auditioned for it several times, and I was waiting for the next audition, but I had still yet to see him. And there was this big storm coming through Manhattan, and everybody's putting their tape up. And I'm like, well, good as time as any to go to Macy's and buy a TV, So I go down to Macy's, I go inside, and the entire wall is filled with screens of As the World Turns, and filled with screens of Dusty. And I'm like, oh, crap. I thought I was going to get that job. He's a kid. Oh, my God. Because Brian's actually younger than me. So I was just like, well, all right. And I get this television, it's still the huge back thing. I get it out. The storm has passed. The world is beautiful. This big storm has cleaned everything out of Manhattan. And the last checker cab I ever saw in my life pulls up and takes me home. And the rest is history. I obviously got that role, but I was so sure as soon as I saw him, there was no way I was ever going to get that job.
That is so funny. Yeah. And starting with Martha and Brian, what was that like? Being involved with the two of them?
Well, and I just wanted to make sure that I kept this job. So I was always really bouncy because, as I said, I'm a little older than them. And so I was just like trying to be, so I was like younger than them for a while, being really goofy. And it's like, so I finally settled in and settled down, and we had a blast together. We really did. And that was one of the ones you and I were speaking earlier about. I was this bad girl that was stealing Dusty, and I was walking down the street with an old friend of mine, Jasmine Guy, who is a well-known actress and well-known at the time. And this woman comes up to us, pushes her aside to go, you heifer, because I was being mean to Lily, and I was stealing Lily's man. But we had a great time. We really
You
did.
must have got that over the years. I mean, Meg caused, some trouble over the years for sure.
Yeah, people were really mad. And I actually forgot about this because it was so brief, but I stole Sierra's positive pregnancy test to pretend like I was pregnant. And people were so mad because Sierra was so nice.
So funny. How many Snyders were there when you arrived? Do you remember?
Everybody. I was the last. I was the
You were
last
the
to
last.
arrive. So, Seth, Caleb, I'm Michael. I'm like,
Mike,
Lisa,
Renee, Lisa.
Oh no, Renee could have come after. I think I was the last. No, Renee was there. I was the last.
Wow. Yeah. So what was that like coming into that huge family, that amazing set that lasted from the moment you all came on till the last of the show? I mean, till the show went off the air.
Yeah, that was the very best part about being on that show. I mean, I love so many aspects of it, but being in that kitchen, that was when we were bottom of the night schedule, and at 8:15 everybody had to take their hands off the camera and we had to go to dinner break. So you made sure we were on it, so we were in that kitchen. We knew it. We knew where everything was. We could cook, we could fight, we could spit at one another. We could do everything, but we were getting out before that dinner break. It was such an amazing experience to work with all of the Snyders who, except for Hensley when he first started, John Hensley when he first started, everybody had theater experience. And so we had, and as I said, the kitchen, we did all the scenes in the kitchen for the whole show, right? So we might have to change our clothes at some point, and we were out in, I mean, we had it down to a science. And I love that place so much. I have to say, when I left, one of my absolute prized possessions is a tin plate that was over the door, and the prop people they all signed it and they gave it to me when I left. And it was wonderful. Yeah, it meant a lot to me. But yeah, I love the kitchen, love the Snyders,
yeah, we're going to come back to the Snyders in a minute, but Meg married Tonio, right? And Rod, her cousin. Talk about, Peter and Bill Fichtner.
Well, the fun
working opposite.
Yeah, they were quite the opposite. And the fun part about it was they allowed my character to age, to grow, right? So it going from Dusty to Antonio to Peter was a big change, and it was as though they had made a maturity leap with me, and that was a really fun time to find why Meg was the way she was. So as he was saying, is I found myself in a rich penthouse, but I didn't have love. And being part of a large family and being the youngest part of even a loving family, you're always searching for attention. You're searching for love. And she kind of sort of did that again when she got married to him. So it was a it was a really good growth time for me as an actor to find all the nuances of what her sadness meant and how that got her from just being, the girl you love to hate to the person that you can really understand. She can get somewhere where she can actually find happiness. And then working with Bill was always fun. That they had never planned on that. Bill and I had one scene together in a hospital room. Somebody else was, I don't even remember what it was. We were both visiting someone in the hospital, and Bill and I had an exchange. And they went, And that's actually how that
Isn't
came
that
to me.
that's magical? I love
Yeah,
when I hear stories like that, when
yeah,
out of nowhere it just happens.
yeah.
Um, the late Elizabeth Hubbard, any memories of working with Liz?
So many. One of the things you gotta love with Liz, same with Kathleen Widows, is Liz will say whatever needs to be said in the scene, right? It may not be in the script, but it's going to make the scene more efficient. So she's going to go ahead and do that. And I remember Martha had requested getting her hair cut. And it was a big deal to let Martha cut her hair. So they had to write it in, and everything is all written into the script and this and that and the other. Meanwhile, I had a bad dye job and my hair got fried. So the reason I actually started with short hair was because it looked like I had put the end of it over a stove. So that hair got shorter and shorter and shorter until I had that very short hair, right? So I didn't ask permission for that, so it was never written. Martha chickened out. She never cut her hair. So everybody's talking about it. And the only person who ever mentioned the fact that I had changed my hair was Liz Hubbard. She just went off on it one day when we were on set together. They was like, Meg, what did you do? Because again, Liz plays by her own rules. And I do love I didn't get to work with her enough because it was always when I was visiting Lily. I would be going over to Lily's house. And she always, I love the way she treated Meg. She had my number from the beginning, no matter what, no matter what line, she was always like, I know you. Okay. I see you. I know you.
I think that's the brilliance of Liz. I think she had everyone's number.
Oh, yeah.
She really did. And so it made it fun to watch how she would react to each different character.
Absolutely.
Oakdalian says, Jennifer Ashe's Meg was deliciously nosy and mischievous with echoes of Nola Reardon, who Lisa played.
Right.
What was your take on the Meg-Josh relationship, as his history with Iva was that tough sell of, was that hard for you?
Well, and no, because to be fair, as an actor, I was like, cool, I get to work with Bill Fichtner. But yes, we were like, okay, is he my cousin? Okay, so they're writing it so he's not my cousin, but he did. How are you explaining that he attacked my sister? And it, in today's world, we would not get away with making him okay, redeeming him. We would not be able to get away with redeeming him. So the idea that, he has been abused as a child, and rape is about violence. It isn't about sex. And he was acting out of violence because he had been abused himself. Yes, but then you take it to the point where it's like, oh, he's fine. We all love him. He's just so great. And there's some gray areas in that. That's a soap opera gray area.
It is the brilliance of the writing at that time, of how the audience fell in love with him.
Right. And I mean, they did the same thing with Doug, did the same thing with Luke and Laura. It started with him raping her in a nightclub, right?
Yeah.
And so that was even bigger because that was actually on air. This had happened, 16, 17 years prior, creating Lily. So I personally just went, cool, I have a new storyline. But there were some.
I love that. Yeah. Hey, and I get to work with Bill. Of course, as an actor, you want to stretch. You want to have that fun. Well, fans, will cut my head off if we don't talk about the entire family. So, and first of all, somebody, let me find it, because Paul asked or begged if you would say mama.
Mama. Mama.
Well, please talk about
Kathleen Widows absolutely was my mama, and she had little nicknames for all of us. I don't know if anybody else has said.
No, share them.
To be fair, I don't remember the others. I don't remember, but I was Piggy. And I have so many little pigs, little pigs that she gave me through the years, because it was. But yeah, so a wonderful story has not to do with me, but when we first got together and we had these, we're all trapped together at a table or something like that, it was Kathleen's goal to make Brian Hensley blush.
John Hensley?
And John Hensley. Did I say something else? Sorry.
I thought I heard Brian, but it might have been the sound.
Sorry. So anyway, so she could have a little bit of a sassy mouth on her. And, she was only 50, but when you're 20, or before that, actually, that's like, you can't say that. You can't say that. And she would just go out of her way to make him blush. And it was so easy and it was so much fun.
I think it might have been Scott Bryce who might have talked about the fact that she used to flash as well.
She was a bit of a flasher. It is true. She enjoyed doing that. And again, it was just to freak out the boys. And also there were several things that she always came in. Every time she came in the kitchen, she always came in with an ad-lib line. And it was usually about what she was doing. And because they finally listened to the line, they finally said, Kathleen, you can no longer say that you've been out milking the bull. Think about it for a moment. And so, yes, that was one of her favorite lines to walk into the kitchen with.
Oh, God. I love that. What are your memories of John?
So John, besides getting him embarrassed, John and I worked together a lot. And I always really felt like him as a brother, more than Seth, Caleb. But no, I mean, Michael and I worked together. But I had a special place in my heart for John because we were the closest in age. We were the ones that got in trouble, and he's just lovely. He's just a fun guy to work with, and we grew together. I mean, that was the other thing that was fun was that John and I grew as actors together, which was fun to work on.
And the late Michael.
The late Michael was hilarious.
Talented young man. A talented young man.
Talented young man. He was hilarious. He was, generous. He was all of these things, and he just couldn't get the monkey off his back. And it was tragic to watch. And I can tell you, some people who had been in their own struggles really worked to try to help him. But he was lovely.
You have to be ready yourself, as much as somebody can try.
Exactly. He was lovely.
Wow.
And Renee and I were amazing friends outside of the studio. And actually, I mean, I would say, John, we would go out as a group some, but Renee and I were great friends and remained friends for years afterwards. And she was always, she was a very independent soul. And she had this, she was staying in this amazing loft that had these massive, it was an artist loft, and he had these massive, paintings. And one of the last things when I decided to move to Los Angeles, I didn't know what I was doing. 4 of us got together, Susie Snyder, Renee Propt, myself, and this other woman who actually her name is escaping me now, but was not on the soaps. We got together, spent all night. Susie was a photographer, took pictures as biker chicks, as lingerie. We each took individual nudes. And throughout that night, we all made big transitions about what we were doing with our lives. It was really amazing. And I made the choice to move to Los Angeles that night. And so that was just Renee. Renee was the biggest thing that I have to say is when we did the individual nudes, hers was curled up in a ball. And that just said so much about how she needed to find, which I think she did. She needed to find her wings to get out of some of her own life experiences. And then she wound up living in the Dakota, she had Broadway. So yeah, she did wonderfully.
And Lisa?
And Lisa and I, we also spent a lot of time outside. In fact, she came and stayed in my home. And she was definitely a sister. And I did a play actually with her husband back in the day. And so spent quite a bit of time out when they lived, or her ex-husband, but
in Jersey,
in
maybe?
New Jersey, on the lake. This amazing home. But her experience on soap operas prior, she really ran, the ship sometimes, you know what I mean? She had such an experience in, that getting out, but for the dinner, before the dinner bell, that was Lisa. I mean, she could pull it all together. She could get us all right, we're going to do it. Let's go. This is because not only did she have a lot of theater experience, she had a lot of soap experience, and she knew it down.
And Doug created both of her amazing characters.
Exactly right. Yeah. Just like she created both of mine. He created both of mine.
Right. I mean, you're so lucky. And Stephen Bassett, what do you remember about Stephen?
Stephen. He was the biggest teddy
tall
bear.
Stephen.
Tall
Seth was
Stephen.
tall.
Yeah. He was the biggest teddy bear. And he was also one of the ones that was trying, when Kathleen would try to embarrass John, he was like, he was the dad figure. He was much more the dad figure. It's like, no, we have to put this together. He was definitely the dad of the family, and just a gentle guy.
Fans were asking, when Meg left town, were you ever asked to return, or did you ever want to return?
Funny you should ask. I did choose to leave after 3 years because that's the original contract that you get. And I was like, okay, it's time to, get to the next phase in my life, And I loved going back for the events, going back for a wedding or a funeral or something. That was terrific. And I actually was talking to Doug about not necessarily coming back for a full contract, but I had an idea for a storyline, and he was generous enough to let me come and pitch it to him in Connecticut. And I don't know if it would have gone anywhere, and then he passed. But
do you remember the story?
I should have had that. I should have brought that memory up before I said that.
That's okay.
It was a great idea because it also had a beginning, middle, and end. Because again, I didn't think, or I don't think I really wanted to go back for another 3 years. But the idea to come back as a nice arc, I thought, maybe, what do you think? And I mean, he was up to listen. I don't know whether he would have done with it, but he was up to listen. But he's, Yeah, it actually had a whole, because it was obviously going to be without, why I came back without Bill. Anyway, if I ever think of it, I'll
It's
tell
so
you the
incredible,
why.
the talent that you worked with there too. World Turns had such incredibly talented people.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I was lucky to just move through so many of them when I changed my life. Every time Meg changed her life, and then I finally got to the hospital and I got to work with all those people. Working
And let Don Hastings crack you up.
Yes, exactly. He's a very, very funny guy. And and Larry Brigman, I also worked with quite a bit once I got to the hospital. And he was a little bit like, Liz's character, who always had my number. He always had my number, kind of thing. And he was always fun to work with. And amazing talent, once again.
12 days from today, Miss Eileen turns 90.
Really? That's
Yeah.
fantastic. That's wonderful.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Crazy. It's also really, really crazy. I think about that, and that just ages me, so we're not going to go there.
Did you ever did you get much time with the late Kathy Hayes?
No, we really never crossed paths. Our storylines never crossed paths. And as I said, the way the show was shot, there were a few people I almost never spoke to. Colleen Zank was another that she always loved my hair, because Colleen had about 5 hairs on her head and always made them look amazing, right? And I still have a lot, but I used to have a lot. I was going to curse, but I'm not going to curse. A ton, and that's all our dialogue ever was. We never worked together. The only thing she would ever talk to me is about my hair. So.
I love that. I love that. Who cast you? Who was in casting at the time? Do you remember?
Leapart.
Oh, Vince. Yep.
Vince Leapart. Yeah, Vince Leapart.
Yeah.
And then his later, his brother was my agent. Later than that, but yeah.
That's fun too. That's fun too. Well, as I said in the intro, you completed work on Nowhere Pie, which is in post-production. Can you tell us about the film?
Oh, well, I can. So this young woman who is a aspiring musician, her mother doesn't believe in her. So basically the idea is I have been a musician in my life. I know how hard it is. I don't really think she's got the chops to do it. And I really try. I really crush her dreams. And so then she takes this lovely drive out to the desert, and she goes to a diner, Nowhere Pie, and her dead father comes and sits down beside her. And then they have a lovely little scene that brings her back her hope. So that's basically the premise.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to do.
Love that. And talk about your web series, Struggling.
So Struggling is actually a enclosed series. Each has their own chapter. Each one, I'm in one chapter, and then the end, the whole group winds up running into one another, basically. And so I am I guess I mean a lot. So a young artist, she is putting up a picture for an art show, and I am someone who represents someone else in the art show, and it's an identical picture, painting. And I'm like, Miss Maribel thinks that you should take that down, and so I challenged this young woman, and it turns out that Miss Maribel, who I represent, who did the picture, is a child. And so, and it's just like the fight ensues, and she says it's an original painting, and the girl says, I did this by paint by numbers, you know. And then the end is a whole, the last, when we all get together, not Miss Maribel, but we all get together, is a farcical thing.
I love that. Michael Howland wrote, Jennifer, your time on As the World Turns was just the glory days of the show, the best of the best, actors and stories. So thrilled to see you again. It just takes me back to that happy time in my life watching.
Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, it was such a happy time for me, I have to say. It was one of the best jobs I ever had, working with everybody there. It was such a nice atmosphere to work, and you just loved going into work every day, and especially because of, you know, our little family unit. But it was
yeah,
really
yours had to be, especially at that time, really extra special, because
yeah.
I don't know many shows that had that many. I mean, there are shows that had family members, but the Snyders were a huge family.
And not only was, yeah, they were huge, and they put us together a lot. I mean, that was
Yeah.
a big part of it, was they actually put us together a lot. And all that food, we ate all that food. Actors, every time you put food in front of actors, doesn't matter whether they all starved in a past life. We just, you know, so we're making food, we're eating food, you know, so you really bonded
The Hubbard,
as a group.
the Hubbard squash.
The Hubbard squash.
I mean, come on.
Come on.
My favorite Jennifer moment was when Tonio threw a special ornament to the floor and she picked it up. The scene was simplistic yet amazing. You handled it deliciously. Don't know if you remember that at all, but
I do, now that you reminded me of it. I hadn't thought about that in forever.
You have a favorite scene, show that you remember that stands out in your mind?
Well, I know one that was always just a lot of fun, and they had to spend a lot of time whether they decided they were going to actually take it or not. The first time Rod and Meg get together, I'm in a, no, it may not have been the first. No, it wasn't the first time. The first time, actually, that was really sad. That was so sweet. I loved that line. It was one of my favorite lines. So I run away. We kiss, and I run away, and we go to just a remote place off the thing, and we do end up having sex. And when it's all said and done, we're both sort of surprised and sad, and I just like, but I don't love you. And it was such a beautiful line to give me. It just, the idea that I was so surprised that I was like, how, why, but, you know, and it was just so, I love that line. Loved it. But then the next one is soon after. I've come from some place where I had a ball gown on and a huge bit of hair, and we're in bed and it's a complete mess. And he calls, and no, someone has called me, because I say, tell him, Bill's beside me, and I say something or another, tell him that I've got a headache and I had to leave. And Bill takes his tongue and he licks up my arm while I'm saying this. I'm going to tell you, it took him like a half an hour to decide, can we do that? Can we take it? And they did. They actually did take it. They did air it. Those are some fun. Those are some fun moments.
I love that. Terry was asking, how did you meet Jasmine Guy? Were you in class together?
We went to high school together.
I love that.
Yeah, we're both from Atlanta. Yeah. So I've known Jasmine forever. And actually, her sister had her younger sister, and I remember like, oh, Monica, the baby sister, she had a child who's was really good friends with my daughter. So we all connected back then, because when I was in New York, I would run into Jasmine and we would hang out a little bit, and then we all got separated. But when I saw Monica again, we reconnected, which was nice.
And where did you live when you did World Turns? On the Upper West?
I lived on the Upper West Side, and I just decided to move. I moved a lot, but it was always on the Upper West Side. And my last apartment was 94th and West End, and it was one of my favorites. I could.
Did you walk a lot to the broadcast center?
I did. And so you did have to get out early to do it. But because the broadcast center is all the way west, and I'm on West End, just, from 94th, 57th, then of course I'm running late and I put up my little hand and I go in a cab, but I did try to walk when I could.
And we talked backstage, you miss New York.
I miss New York a lot. I love New York. It will always be near and dear to my heart. And as I was saying, every time I go back, there's just something that it just settles in. I'm just like, oh, I feel very powerful in New York. And part of that was because of what I did there, and how old I was. And, I lived in New York when I didn't make $1, and I lived in New York when I made a lot of money, and I had just as good a time both times, and it was a time when you could do that. I know it's a lot harder these days. My first apartment by myself was on 71st in Columbus. It cost $165 a month. Now, okay, it was a closet.
There is nothing.
But it was a closet. It was 7 feet by 12 feet. The entire apartment, no kitchen sink. It had a half stove and a refrigerator. You had to wash your dishes in the bathroom. And because the sink was porcelain, you just broke all your dishes. But I lived on the Upper West Side for $165. Yeah.
Columbus. It was for that price. Yeah. Wow. You mentioned at the beginning waiting tables. Do you remember where you waited tables?
Oh, yes. So one of the first places I waited tables. So I was a dancer during the day and then waited tables at night and then danced during the day. There was a place called Giggles at 40th and Broadway. And it was really for the garment center. Garment center would end. They would close for the shop. And everybody who worked in the garment center would come. It would be 10 deep at the bar with disco music. And we had to wear designer jeans. And it was basically just drinks and a couple of, fried zucchinis and
like
such.
Jordache or Vidal Sassoon or whatever they were.
Exactly. And then I worked at a couple of different places, but the one that's still there, which was one of the last places, 75th and Columbus. It was an Indian place called Mughalai. I think that's gone. And across the street was Papradelle. And I think Papradelle is actually still there.
I loved Papradelle. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I was the bartender there. Oh, wow. It had all Italian boys in the front. They were all from Firenze. And then next door, same owner, he had all guys that, that he brought over from India because he was Indian. And so I actually bartended at both.
I love that. And Mindy just said, I want to thank Jennifer for sharing such memories. Here in Italy, Loving was a great success on RAI television.
I remember actually getting residuals from Italy. Thank you. I'm glad you guys liked it.
And we had people watching today also from Holland because As the World Turns was huge in Holland.
I didn't know that. I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
So
As the World Turns. Do you have a dream stage role you'd still love to play?
Well, I'm too old for it now, but I always wanted to do Stella, I have to say, in Streetcar. That was always like my go-to. There's, you're pulling out some things you want to just, let me look and see over here. No, most of my plays are inside the house. Basically anything Tennessee Williams, you'll always get me to do. He is my Shakespeare, you know, they're Shakespeare people and they're Tennessee Williams people. He is, you know, and I can't remember it. Anyway,
No,
I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, that's great. Jennifer, so great to meet you. Thank you for going down a memory lane with us. The fans loved it.
Blast. I am so happy you asked me. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Stay here as I sign off for just a second, okay? Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you to Jennifer Ashe for spending the hour and going on a trip down memory lane. This is my last show for a little over a week as I head to the beach with my family and enjoy a little downtime. I hope you'll catch up on some Locker Room episodes while I'm away. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And don't forget, if you like audio versions, you can stream the Locker Room on your favorite streaming platform. Have a great Labor Day weekend, everybody. And as always, please stay safe, and I'll see you the week of September 11th.